How do we actually listen? I mean, really listen, especially when we're trying to understand someone's story for research, or to make a new policy, or even just in a classroom. We often think we've got the right tools for the job, but what if our standard methods are actually getting in the way? Well, today we're going to unpack a brilliant approach that offers a better, more respectful way to hear and, more importantly, honor people's stories.
Look, for far too long, research has felt like a bit of a one-way street. And this is especially true for Indigenous peoples, both here in Australia and all over the world. Researchers would just come in, they'd collect stories and data, and then they'd leave. People were treated like subjects to be observed, their knowledge just taken, with no real say in how it was recorded or used. It created this legacy of deep mistrust, and you can understand why.
All right, so here's our plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at this big challenge research is facing. Then, we'll explore the power of an incredible Indigenous method called yarning. After that, we hit a really interesting snag, what I'm calling the recording dilemma, before we get to a fantastic collaborative solution, and finally, show you exactly how you can put it into practice yourself. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about that fundamental challenge. This is all about flipping a power dynamic that's been around for centuries, moving people from simply being observed to actually being the researchers and the owners of their own knowledge. This quote from Linda Tuhiwai Smith just gets right to the heart of it. Now, that phrase, decolonizing knowledge, might sound a bit academic, but it boils down to a really simple, powerful idea. It's about challenging the old notion that only Western ways of doing research are the right ways. It's all about creating and using methods that are actually grounded in Indigenous cultures and values, putting Indigenous people back in the driver's seat of their own narratives.
So how do we start to make that shift? Well, one incredible answer lies in a culturally grounded method known as yarning. And trust me, it is so much more than just having a chat.
Yarning is a process that's deeply, deeply rooted in the oral traditions of Indigenous Australia. It's not your typical interview with a list of questions. It's a much more holistic way of sharing knowledge, where the story, the connection between people, and the relationship you build are just as important as the information itself. It's about really listening to each other.
And, yarning isn't just one vague concept. It's actually a really well-defined and flexible process. Bessarab and Gandu identified at least 4 different types. You've got social yarning, which is all about building that initial trust. Then there's research topic yarning, which is more focused. Collaborative yarning is about working together to figure things out. And sometimes, a yarn might become therapeutic, which allows people to share deeper, more personal experiences.
So yarning sounds pretty much perfect, doesn't it? Culturally safe, respectful. But this is where the work of Dr. Marnee Shay, which this whole explainer is based on, introduces a really crucial plot twist. It's a problem created by the one tool that pretty much every single researcher reaches for without a second thought.
The humble audio recorder. On the surface, it seems perfect, right? It's objective, it's designed to capture every single word. But when you're in a yarn, especially with communities who have a long history of being studied and surveyed, this little device can accidentally bring back the exact power imbalance you're trying so hard to get away from. And this just illustrates that conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the promise of this perfect word-for-word record, but then look at the problems it creates. A recorder can feel intimidating, it can make people second-guess themselves, start censoring what they say because they're worried about how their exact words will be used. And for many Indigenous participants, it can trigger that historical mistrust of being watched and recorded. But the biggest thing, it compromises their self-determination. Suddenly, they lose control over which parts of their story become permanent data.
Okay, so if our default tool is flawed, what's the alternative? This is where Dr. Shay's work provides such an elegant and powerful solution, one that builds on the deep principles of yarning.
And it's called Collaborative Yarning Methodology, or CYM. It's designed to keep that deep, relational process of yarning at its heart, while completely flipping the script on how we capture the knowledge that's being shared.
Let's take a look at this model, because it's really clever. Right at the very center, you've got the heart of the process: story, knowledge, and relationship. That's what comes out of the yarn. But see how they're influenced by that outer circle? Things like a person's past, present, and future, their family and community, their sense of who they are. It just goes to show that no story is ever told in a vacuum. It's all connected.
So you might be wondering, how on earth do you capture a story without a recorder? And the answer is just so simple, it's profound. It's called a storyboard. Now, this can be just a piece of paper, a whiteboard, whatever. As the yarn unfolds, the researcher and the participant work together to write down the key points. The crucial difference here is that the participant has total control. They are the ones who choose what gets written down. And this is where it gets really practical. Because this methodology isn't just some abstract theory for academics. It's a tool that can be used by pretty much anyone who wants to gather stories in a more respectful way.
Here's what one of these storyboards actually looks like in action. You can see it's not some polished, perfectly transcribed document. It's a living, working text. You can see ideas being jotted down, arrows connecting thoughts. It's a bit messy, and it's totally collaborative. This is what the co-creation of knowledge actually looks like.
So, how do you do it? Well, it's pretty straightforward. First, you just start the yarn. You build that connection. Then, as you're talking, you start co-creating this record together, writing down key ideas where the participant can see them the whole time. And at every single step, you're checking and confirming. Have I got that right? Is this what you want to say? This means the participant truly owns their story, from beginning to end. They decide what that final record looks like. And this is not just for university researchers. Just imagine a teacher using this to get real, honest feedback from their students without the pressure of a formal interview. Or a school leader using it to build a new school policy with parents. Or even a health worker who wants to truly understand a patient's experience by building their story with them. It's a tool for anyone who needs to listen deeply and ethically.
So the most important takeaway is this. Collaborative yarning methodology just fundamentally shifts the dynamic. People are no longer just subjects who are providing you with raw data. They become active partners, they become co-researchers and co-analysts in their own right, shaping the knowledge from the very first moment. And I guess that just leaves us with one final thought. This whole methodology really rests on a simple but pretty revolutionary question. What if our main goal, in research, in teaching, in leadership, wasn't just to collect stories for our own purposes, but to create a process that truly honors the person sharing them? What might change if we all started there?